Hello there, Romans here and welcome to another music review. I review every album from a viewpoint of a musician, as I'm a singer, songwriter and a bass player for my own group Jakobe, and in April we have released our debut album called Pursuits in Life. What makes the record unique is that it's a pretty heavy prog rock without guitars. Instead you have drums, bass, saxophone and keyboards. You can check out the first single, We're Building Our Own Monument, on my YouTube channel, and in the description of that video you will find all the information about where is the record available, like Spotify, Tidal, Deezer, iTunes, Amazon, so all the digital platforms. But it's also available in this digipack version with a 20 pages long booklet, so in case you like buying CDs because of the booklets, and we all do, then I think you will find it very interesting. And today I'm going to review the new album from Riverside called Wasteland.
Music review. Music review.
Riverside are one of my all-time favorite groups, and I consider them to be in my top 3 of best prog bands of today, along with Lepers and Haken, and one of the best bands overall. I just love this group, I'm a big fan. I actually have all of their studio albums, and I'm even reviewing this album in their t-shirt, Riverside, out of myself. I'm pretty lucky to have seen them live in the original lineup. I think that was in 2011 when they had a 10th anniversary tour, and I even met Mariusz Duda after the concert. He's actually a pretty tall guy, almost like me. And their new album Wasteland is the first pre-order I did in like 2 years. I haven't bought that many records because, you know, recording your own album is quite expensive. So I'm not gonna talk too much about Riverside, as I'm planning to do a worst to best video of Riverside in like 2 months approximately. But some basic info: so this is the first official studio album since the death of Piotr Grudzinski, so the guitar player from the Riverside. I know I'm a bit late on this review, I wanted to make it a few days ago, but I've been sick for the past week, so I wasn't able to speak without bursting into coughing after a couple of sentences. So I've heard the new album 13 times as of now. So without further ado, let's dive right into the review. First thing that kind of struck me about a tracklist is how much Riverside like giving a certain record the beginning and the end. This kind of similar thing happened on the second Life Syndrome, where you had the first track called After and the last track called Before, and even on the previous record Love, Hate and the Time Machine, where we had the first track called Lost and the last track called Found. And it's the same on this record. The first track is called The Day After and the last track is called The Night Before. So I guess this is kind of a showing that the whole record is supposed to be a concept record. The first track, The Day After, is the shortest track. I think it has just something like not even 2 minutes, and it opens up just with Duda's voice. It's sort of a like a cappella, and this isn't really anything new for the band, as they did it, for example, on the track After, even though it was with more backing vocals and with some ambient noise. But here we hear just his voice. Eventually some sounds start to enter, creating certain ambience, and towards the end of this track we get violin. And I think that violin was a really nice addition to this record, because violin for me stands as that sound of the wasteland. We're gonna hear it a few more times on the record, and I really think that this track sets the mood for the record, sort of like isolation and maybe some emotional journey and maybe melancholy to a certain degree. The second track, Acid Rain, is divided into 2 parts. So part 1 is called Where Are We Now? It takes approximately 3 minutes of a song, and it's got quite a heavy riff at the beginning. And the way this song starts is very similar to the instrumental Struggle for Survival on this record. Both of these tracks have riff at the beginning, and then in the case of Acid Rain it's bass, and in the case of Struggle for Survival it's keys that are changing the chords. So the first part, Where Are We Now, is pretty much made of verses, chorus, verses, chorus. Verses are slightly more serious and heavier, and chorus is brighter melodically, and it has very nice arpeggios on keys. And the second part is called Dancing Ghosts. It's slightly more like ambient music, and especially those ohs that we hear as a backing vocals, they are just melodically much brighter, and they are very reminiscent actually of Love, Hate and the Time Machine record. The third track, Veil of Tears, was the first single released from this record, and I remember in summer, immediately when I got the notification, I had to turn on my data and check out the song. The beginning is very reminiscent of the band Royal Blood, and then we have those very heavy verses that kind of remind me of the Reality Dream trilogy from the band. I don't mean the instrumentals, I mean their first three albums. It has that Prince of Persia, Warrior Within, Oriental heavy riff vibe. I really love those verses. And then we have a chorus that is based on acoustic guitars. You have some Hammond. There's a huge contrast between verses and the chorus. And chorus sounds not only a lot brighter, but also much more commercial. And honestly, even after hearing this song for 13 times, I haven't really gotten used to it, because I think that those verses create certain atmosphere. They set for a certain mood. And then the chorus completely spoils that for me. As a songwriter, I would do that chorus in a different way. I would either add a really heavy chorus in the style of the verses, or even if it was an acoustic chorus, I would make it more serious and more dark in tone, because that chorus really sounds out of place in this song. After the second chorus, we get some instrumental parts in the style of Iron Maiden, and then some heavy riffed instrumental part with a guitar solo. All of these parts are really great. I even like that many times throughout the record you will hear some different instruments in form of arrangements in the background, and it really gives some color and adds to the overall sound of the record. So Veil of Tears is definitely a great track, it's just the chorus that I don't really like that much. The fourth track, Guardian Angel, is an acoustic ballad. It kind of sounds like Anathema, and it sounds like a lot happier version of the acoustic songs that Riverside had on Out of Myself or Rapid Eye Movement. Also, an interesting thing is that I've heard an interview with Mariusz where he said he had singing lessons for the first time when he was 40 years old. I think for the preparation of the previous tour, and the vocal coach told him that he has a pretty good sounding low voice. And even though he has used it before, maybe not to such an extent and as on this track, I really like those ambient arrangements, and I also like the lyrics. Honestly, I think that lyrics were never really one of the Riverside's strengths. I don't talk about topics, themes, subject matters, those were always great. But the actual execution of the lyrics, or how the lyrics were written, was kind of a hit and miss in my opinion. I mean, there were songs that were really great in terms of lyrics, but then there were songs that felt kind of ambiguous, and the choice of words kind of felt like pretty much anybody could write those lyrics at times. And it's happening even on this record. Like, I'm taking this from a viewpoint of a lyricist, because for me personally it's a very painful process to write down lyrics. But when I do, I'm usually very satisfied with it. But one of the things that I noticed, there are many lyrics on this record where it simply doesn't rhyme. And I'm not saying that rhyming is like the point of lyrics, but it just shows that the lyrics are slightly more well thought, like more effort has been put into them. That's just my opinion, of course. But Guardian Angel, actually I like the lyrics of Guardian Angel, because it's like from a viewpoint of a guardian angel who sees people who are turning on each other, and he's supposed to protect them, and eventually he decides to save himself and one person, I guess. So that person may be the listener or more listeners. Well, it's you, so it can be one or more people. So it's a very nice track, and the interesting thing is that it doesn't have a chorus. The fifth track, Lament, is the song for which they shot a official music video. This is actually the third music video that they shot. And Lament is actually a song that convinced me to pre-order this album. This is the best track on the album. Similarly to Acid Rain and Veil of Tears, we yet again have this contrast between verses that are very acoustic based and slightly more melancholic, and a very heavy, doomy chorus. But in the case of this song, it really works, because that mood and that atmosphere is maintained through the various parts. What is very interesting about the song is that it's written in a 3/4 time signature, so you can kind of like dance waltz. And then in the chorus, there's one part with those drums, pum 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 pum, where it changes from 3/4 to 4/4, and it's very interesting rhythmically. I did pretty much the same thing on my debut album. There's a song called Pilgrim in Doubt. It's a very dark oriental track that has been to a certain degree influenced by Riverside, and it's also a song in 3/4 time signature, and there's one bar in the chorus in a 4/4 time signature, and it makes the song much more interesting rhythmically. Also, the structure of this song is interesting. You have verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, and then some instrumental parts. Violin is a very nice addition to acoustic part. Very nice guitar solo, kind of Gilmore-ish. and the end, the last minute of the song seems to be like this kind of ambient music, and we yet again hear this violin as in the first track, and this represents the sound of the Wasteland for me. I just wish this part was developed a little further, because I think sonically it's really worth it. The sixth track is an instrumental and the longest track on the album, called The Struggle for Survival. This is an instrumental divided into two parts. I honestly don't know where the first part ends and the second part starts. I guess that the first part, Dystopia, is like most of the song, and then the second part is that acoustic outro in a way. When we look at Dystopia, I really like those Lappai ski textures. This is one of the main ingredients of Riverside's sound, those big keyboard textures. And I think that the keyboards are kind of in the background most of the record, in my opinion, so I like it that we can actually hear them here. Then it's very cool when the bass enters. This is more like soundtrack-ish part, very reminiscent of maybe Lunatic Soul. And then when the guitar solo starts, and then we also have a keyboard start, this is made in a kind of like 70s prog rock jam fashion. I really like some of those tense moments. I think it's the parts where you have like bells or something like that. Battle Royale is acoustic with some backing vocals, and it's more calming after all those riffs. This song has some moments, but personally I don't think there are enough standout moments, and even when I heard this track for 13 times, I still can't really remember it that well. Mariáš is quite known for being into post-apocalyptic computer games, so I think many of the song's parts would work perfectly as a soundtrack to some post-apocalyptic computer game where you wouldn't really have to focus on the background music, but you would have something else to focus on, some tasks in the game. So in this case I think it will work perfectly, but as a individual piece on the record, this song just doesn't really do it for me. The seventh track is called River Down Below. This was also the second single released out of the record, and this track, along with Veil of Tears, at first gave me the impression that with this record Riverside may sort of get back to their roots and record an album that's very reminiscent of their first three records. It didn't happen. This record has actually much more in common with Love, Hate and the Time Machine, and it seems like a logical successor, for better or worse. So an interesting thing about River Down Below is that it actually has an acoustic intro for like a minute, again very reminiscent of the acoustic tracks from first and the third album. And then the actual song is very nice and calming. It has that Pink Floyd-ish vibe and a very, very Gilmore-ish guitar solo. Very nice track. The title track, Wasteland, starts again with acoustic guitars that we hear quite a lot on this record, and it has almost like a folk vibe at the beginning, maybe reminiscent of Jethro Tull to a certain degree. And closing to 3 minutes, the song kicks off into an instrumental. These instrumental parts are a lot similar to the song Struggle for Survival. A slightly better track than Struggle for Survival, but still I don't think this song has enough memorable moments for me. If my voice is shaking, it's because it's still kind of difficult for me to talk, so sorry for that. The last track, The Night Before, was probably the biggest surprise for me and one of the most unique moments in Riverside's discography. It's a piano-based song, almost like Anathema Goes Pop. It's a beautiful and emotional track. I especially love the third verse, where it's sang in 2 octaves, and it's also a very nice song lyrically, and it's just very catchy and really, really beautiful track. So to sum up, I can't really help but feel a little disappointed with this record. I'm also not a big fan of production. I mean, at first I was so excited when I heard that Riverside decided to continue as a trio. I thought that they were probably going to do something similar to what I did on my record, like heavy prog rock music without guitars. I thought that they were going to use just their own instruments and create something maybe more fresh and unique. And even though I was aware that they would need session guitar players for tours, that was okay. I just thought that they would go for something more original. I don't really care about the guitars, but it seems like with Piotr's death, it's not just guitars not having that traditional sound, but it seems like drums and keyboards are sometimes way too much hidden in the mix, and I just at times it seems like this whole record is about guitars and bass, so the instruments that Marius recorded, and I kind of feel that they are not using all of their potential. I was also kind of disappointed with Love, Hate and the Time Machine, and both of these records are very, very similar. Now, I've read pretty much every review I saw or read about this record was 100% positive. Everybody's calling it a masterpiece, a fantastic record, and a lot of people say it's a very melancholic, emotional ride. Honestly, I think that this is a pretty bright sounding record many times. I don't really feel melancholy that often on this record. Love, Hate and the Time Machine, the previous record, was the Riverside's happiest record, but I would say that Wasteland is in many ways similar. It's not as happy as Love, Hate and the Time Machine, but it's definitely one of the brightest records that they've made. It's nowhere near as melancholic as the first 3 records, for instance. This is what strikes me because, for example, I'm not necessarily a big fan of Lunatic Soul, not because I don't like that music, but simply because I have never really listened to it extensively. But a friend of mine recommended me the album Fractured. He was like, you have to listen to Fractured. I had so many regrets about not reviewing that album last year and not putting it among my top 10 best records for 2017, because Fractured was a masterpiece. That's such a fantastic album. And I understand that Duda is pretty much responsible for everything that happens in Lunatic Soul, for all the instruments and so on, but he's pretty much a principal songwriter in Riverside as well. And Fractured, in my opinion, is a couple of leagues above Wasteland and Love, Hate and the Time Machine. I think it's a much better album than these two. So I think he has the potential to write great music. So I don't really know where is the problem, because, I mean, Wasteland, despite its some really memorable songs and moments, is a record that, if released by any prog band, it's a record that I think most of us, or me at least, I would forget about in a couple of weeks. You know, I remember when I heard the album for the first time, I was really excited. I was like, yeah, I want this record to be the album of the year for me. I want this to be one of the best records I've ever heard. The second time I was listening to it, I was like, okay, I still have to listen to it, third, fourth, fifth, and, you know, I've heard this album 13 times, and I pretty much have the same opinion about the record as I had when I heard it the second or the third time. So I still respect them a lot. I mean, Mariáš Duda is definitely one of the biggest music heroes for me as a singer and a bass player and a songwriter. I love the guy. It actually breaks my heart. I hate criticizing because I want to build my channel on promoting music I love. So if you have never listened to Riverside, definitely check out their first 5 albums. It's a must because I love it. Also check out Lunatic Soul's Fractured. Well, when it comes to their last 2 studio albums, listen to them. It's definitely, by no means this is a bad or weak album, but I think it's nothing really extraordinary, nothing special. The problem with Riverside is that they set their bar so high with the first 2 albums and ADHD and songs that it's kind of difficult to get past that or maintain that, and it seems like they failed to do so with the last studio albums. So anyway, that's my opinion. So what about you? If you are a fan of Riverside, you can let me know in the comment section below how much do you like the new album, how well do you think it compares to the previous records, whether you agree with me or not. If you like this review, don't forget to hit the like. You can follow me on Facebook or on Instagram. You can find the links to both in the description of this video below. Also, if you enjoyed this review, don't forget to subscribe. You can check out my own original music, my live performances, and Where's the Best series. Thanks a lot for watching.